Good morning. Welcome to the second day of the IT Press Tour. This is the 66th edition, and I remember when we discussed this with some of your colleagues, it was before the reorganization of the split CSG or Cloud Software Group made, let's say, splitting Arctera in 3 entities. You will explain this probably, because it's important for them for all the group to understand where InfoScale comes from. I have to admit that I worked for Veritas Software in '97, okay, for 10 years. So I'm not completely objective, if I can say that. I have some special links. Then I edit something completely different. So. But just to put things in perspective. So my name is Philippe Nicola. I am the organizer of the tour.
So Joe D'Angelo, I lead the product management. I don't want to take Cassie's thunder. Product management team. I'm the director of, and I will be walking you through the story of InfoScale today, how it's relevant in an evolving IT landscape. And I just want to absolutely thank every single one of you for attending from across a vast geography. So hopefully you guys get some valuable insights here, and looking forward to the Q&A later on.
Yep, and hi, my name is Cassie Stanek. I'm the lead product marketing manager for InfoScale. With us also is Jax Jackson, who heads product marketing and product management, and Agnes Jacobs, also representing the product management team. We're unfortunately not in office with you guys, but we so appreciate the amazing group that you guys have assembled and the tour in general. It's a really great opportunity and such a great fit for us. Let me start by, just giving you a little bit of context on who your speakers are today. Joe, I'll start with you first. He is a seasoned product and technology leader. Joe has over 25 years of experience in high availability, clustering, and data resiliency. He, like I said, leads product management for InfoScale, and previously was also our lead at Arctera. He's helped shape some of the most mission-critical solutions used by enterprises worldwide. His career spans Symantec, Veritas, most recently Arctera and InfoScale. So with all this hands-on experience, ranging from delivery consultant to technical director, he's really seen it all. I love hearing the stories, and I'm sure that those are going to come through in his overview today. And then next joining us is Bruce Scheibe. Like Bruce said, he brings decades of experience leading sales across storage, high availability, and data resiliency. His career spans Dell EMC, Veritas, and Arctera, and now InfoScale. Today, also, he leads our go-to-market strategy. So, taking us to this next generation and this next life cycle stage for us. We will absolutely get into the CSG acquisition and what that means for InfoScale. We're all very, very excited for the separate space and the investment that's going to be made into the data resiliency space. And with that, let's get on with the story.
Awesome. Thanks, Cassie. Appreciate it. Everyone can see the slides. Hopefully they come through clear. Yes. We look good?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And like I said, we have a section allocated at the end for Q&A. So if there are questions, we'll be sure to go through all of them. And I give every disclaimer, and I'm sure this is not something you guys are going to be shy about, but the only dumb question that I ever get is the one you don't ask. So please feel free to just, fire away when the time comes. So in terms of the agenda and what we're going to go through today, we're going to talk a little about who is InfoScale and the identity of InfoScale, right? As it is, it seems like it's a human being, but it is a living thing. It has evolved over many years, and to the point that was made earlier about working for Veritas back in 1997, I think that's fantastic. I wasn't a employee of Veritas. I started my career with Symantec, but I was a customer of Veritas's. So going back to 2001. So you got me beat by a couple of years. But also with Jax on the call as well, we've got some folks that do go back to the 90s in terms of some historical context there. So we have seen quite a bit of evolution in the product, and I'm really excited about being able to talk about where we're taking it next and the sort of the evolution of where we are today and the capabilities that we've introduced. We're going to I like to put a context around what InfoScale is capable of or where we position it. So we want to talk a little bit about the state of IT operations and draw a little bit of a distinction between what would be sort of point solution technology that's focused on individual applications or individual outcomes versus what we consider to be operational resilience and cyber resiliency, something that's more consequential, more strategic, and I think resonates more with today's IT buyer and IT influencer. There's a fair amount of challenges that have customers have faced over the years, and we understand the what I consider to be the mnemonic of fires, floods, fault lines, and fat-fingered commands. Right, that's the thing that seems to most affect customers. We know that that's evolved and that's changed. The threat landscape has changed. The concerns and the challenges and priorities have changed, and we're going to show how InfoScale is meeting that challenge for our customers. And in doing so, in modernizing that operational resilience. And modernization, that's a very important concept these days, right? It's the transformation story. It's understanding how I'm going to move my IT infrastructure from legacy heritage type architectures into something that could be more cloud native or something that could be more adaptable or scalable across a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud ecosystem. And then we'll go into the bits and bytes a little bit of how InfoScale actually achieves these elements and achieves these outcomes across a myriad of different verticals and different industry considerations. And then, of course, Q&A provided at the time, and we'll get you guys some food in there as well. So I'll let you guys decide at what point if you want to take a break, but just stop me if you have to. Otherwise, I will keep pressing along. Cool. So let's start a little bit about the context of InfoScale and the sort of the verticals and customer space that we've been most successful in. We are proud to say that while some may consider us legacy, I like to say we have a legacy, and by that I mean we've been through some of the most consequential transitional points of inflection in the industry for the past 35, almost 40 years. We've seen the transition from the physical world to the virtual world. We've seen the transition from the direct attached storage to SAN attached storage back to direct attached storage. We've seen the modernization. We've seen the adoption of cloud. We've seen the adoption of containers. We've seen the adoption of hyperconvergence and virtualization and so on. And throughout that transition, from Veritas to Symantec to Veritas again, Arctera, and now InfoScale, we've been able to, I like to say, ride shotgun with our customers as they make these critical decisions. So whether it's an energy firm, telecom, financial services, pharmaceuticals, or insurance, I like to think that our technology is ubiquitous in its value. One of the things that we are really keen to sort of distinguish ourselves from a lot of the other technology providers in the industry is that while if you are focused on an individual application or if you're focused on an individual piece of infrastructure, what's lost is the context to your business or to your enterprise or to your business outcome. And what we've done over the years with InfoScale, and what I'm really proud of, is what we've been able to sort of evolve that message, is that what we will seek to provide is resilience for your business, resilience for your enterprise. And there's a variety of different business outcomes that come with that. And some of those can be tied to a piece of technology. Some of those can be addressed with a piece of technology. But unless you look at it in full context of how all those pieces work, whether it's productivity, whether it's risk, whether it's revenue, whether it's cost, whether it's your own competitive differentiation, we've been able to help these customers across these verticals achieve that, which gives us that advantage and really does separate us from the competition. Cool. Now you may ask, with all the transition and all of the what I would consider to be volatility, I think that's a fair word to say here over the last few years, we have seen quite a bit, right? We were, Veritas was acquired by Symantec in 2005. From there, we spent roughly 11 years as a business unit within the Symantec framework as a publicly traded company. But it was decided that we needed to spin out and become our own entity once again. And through the advances within Veritas, that company was decidedly separated into two entities. Once it was Arctera took over from the business continuity, software-defined storage, and then our compliance and a small factor of our data protection business, while the remaining primary data protection business went to Cohesity. And just recently, in December of last year, we were acquired by CSG and rebranded as InfoScale. And the exciting thing here is that for the first time in my career, we have a CEO that has taken not just an active role in the acquisition of a company, but in the sort of the formation of the business unit, because he himself appreciates and understands the value of this product and this technology. It's evident in every conversation that we have, and every discussion, every decision that's made. It's to improve not just the product, but improve our customer experience. And that's something I think that for the last few years, most of the CEOs that we've had, unfortunately, weren't given that opportunity because they were so their time was so fragmented across so many different business units. Tom has been a fantastic advocate, and excited to see where CSG takes the product over the next few years.
And Joda, and to also butt in on that one too.
Yeah.
You said it phenomenally. Every phase that you guys have worked on this product, it's been an increasing, advancement towards keeping those mission critical systems alive. And I think where CSG sees the biggest value for InfoScale right now is we've always sat at this intersection of high availability, software-defined storage, and it's evolved. It's real-time resilience that the enterprises are demanding. And we're uniquely and differently poised to capture this space in a way that no other traditional solutions have ever focused on. So this was a strategic acquisition for CSG. It's one that we're very excited to be a part of because we see them as an investment partner. So Tom, again, like Joe said, is very excited about the future, but more importantly, the value that we're already delivering to enterprises at scale today. And as we enter that next chapter, it really is to invest in those areas that are going to deliver speed, autonomy, and operational intelligence to, again, put us on a different level. We just see operational resilience as being such an overlooked space right now where everyone else in the market is reactive.
Yeah. I think the most consequential perspective here is that CSG, and Tom specifically, he doesn't see our customers as a buying center, but rather as investors, right? He sees them as investing in the CSG and InfoScale brand because their success is tantamount to our success. And that is such a breath of fresh air, because for so many years we've been, led around by, this is the getting customers and booking deals and all these sorts of pieces. The change here now is that we want to make sure that customers realize that they're investing with an outcome, right? And that to me, I think, is a remarkable position to hold, and I'm thrilled to be able to promote that. Cool. So why then would InfoScale matter to so many of these customers? And I think what's important is to recognize is that IT is not getting more homogeneous. In fact, it's getting more heterogeneous in most cases. The options to choose from are almost limitless between enterprise software, open source, homegrown, different storage technologies that come about on a what seems like a weekly basis, cloud providers popping up all over the place, different SaaS offerings, different application offerings, different hybrid and hyper-converged infrastructures. All these pieces create an operational minefield for customers to be able to achieve the level of resilience, the level of automation, and the level of recoverability in the face of a myriad of increasing threats. So each one of these particular technologies, they themselves may have a solution for their own little microcosm. But when you don't take into account the interdependencies with them, what I like to call the upstream and downstream relationships, if you don't think about it in terms of the sort of panoramic view of your IT investments and understand the relationships and understand the impact, what you end up with is a very fragmented operational strategy, and that is sort of the killer of what would be operational resilience. And I think that as you start to learn more and more about InfoScale and start to understand the sort of the strategic value that it presents, you'll realize that being able to bridge all of the different technologies together, while seemingly very challenging or seemingly elusive, is actually something that we've been championing for decades. right? Heterogeneous. Back in the day, I'm sure that from 1997 through early 2000s, there was we were trying to avoid the hardware trap kind of marketing campaign that was there for a long time. Operating system, agnostic to the different operating systems, agnostic to different storage providers, and giving the autonomy and those decisions back to the customer. And that's something that we're really keen to promote and certainly proud to champion. So what's getting in the way, right? What's causing all of this headache? What's really causing the sleepless nights or the higher blood pressure for so many of these CTOs and decision makers? Well, I think it's the increasing effectiveness or efficacy of cyber attacks, without question. Successful cyber attacks, right? It's kind of odd to say the word successful because you don't want them to be successful, but when they do effectively, encrypt your data, or they are able to, ransom away your information or exfiltrate your critical data, that is a successful attack, and that number is increasing dramatically. So being to ensure yourself is that you can defend against that increasing cyber attacks, that increasing threat landscape, that's certainly a major consideration. And it's not enough just to have, say, backups. It's not enough just to have copies of data everywhere. It's about, again, operational resilience, which has a lot to do with orchestration and has a lot to do with the workloads and services that are consuming that data, and how you can protect yourself and give yourself that the RPO and RTO capabilities. There's also an increasing number of, or I should say, the outages themselves. They're becoming more and more consequential and becoming more and more widespread. Take, for example, a number of cloud outages. You could pretty much set your watch by every year there's going to be a major cloud outage, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, GCP, and the like. You're going to see some disruptions. And most recently, last year with the AWS outage, we know for certain that the customers that we had running AWS, running our technology, they were able to actually extricate themselves from that drama and move to another region altogether. They could have exfiltrated themselves and moved to another cloud provider if they so chose, or they could have brought their data back on-prem and automated that whole recovery process. So we understand that the threats themselves are growing, but also the impact that's happening is also becoming more and more severe. Compliance standards, that's an ever-increasing demand and expectation. It's table stakes. Being able to ensure that things like stressed exits, being able to know that in the unlikely event of a water landing, as I like to say somewhat colloquially, am I able to, at a moment's notice, initiate my recovery plan that's not going to encumber me such that the process and effort required is going to somehow undermine the investment that I've made in the technology. It's great to be able to have copies of data spread all over the globe. It's great to be able to have one-off applications here and storage providers over there. It's a whole nother conversation to be able to stitch all of that together and orchestrate that in a single workflow. And that's the kind of operational resilience that DORA demands and a lot of these other compliance standards are demanding. And certainly no conversation about resiliency wouldn't go without the fact that the economic impact that the customers are facing is increasing substantially. And it's only getting higher as the demand and the emphasis and the dependency on digital assets and digital transactions and just digital lifestyles increases. So does the impact, and so does the fallout from outages and from downtime. It used to be that enterprise capabilities would drive commercial technology advancements. It's working the other way now. Now we're seeing that commercial expectations, because of the ever-increasing dependency on day-to-day lifestyle choices, whether it's banking, whether it's entertainment, whether it's communications, and so be it. All of those are critical, and even something as insignificant as not being able to transact a shopping cart in your whatever store merchant, that can have a significant impact. And our goal is to ensure that whatever that outcome is for you as a service provider or as an application service provider, we can help you insulate your environment from those threats, but also ensure the recovery process is streamlined and efficient.
Joe, you also said this perfectly too. You said the explosive complexity. So at this strange time, we have this perfect storm of scenarios happening in IT environments. And I know I've heard from you firsthand, CTOs across the board, they're reevaluating a lot of these expectations. And most of it is driven by a lot of the stats, but it's not just one, it's a combination and it's an influx of all of them. And then you also have this shrinking tolerance for downtime. As we've all seen, we're more reliant on applications than ever. And that tolerance for data loss and downtime really has shrunk. I mean, the expectation that something can go down for minutes, let alone hours or days, is just, it's very old and outdated thinking, and it's never going to stand up to especially the speed of AI. So now throw on your AI systems that, those simply can't be restarted when something goes wrong. And that's ultimately that big inflection point, and that's why resilience has to change from this reactive process that we've grown so accustomed to a more, again, proactive, real-time response mechanism. I think that story too about life and death really resonates too, because like you said, it's not just financial impact, it can also be literally a matter of life and death in some scenarios.
Yep. Yeah. When we talk about those key business outcomes, I like to categorize them as productivity, revenue, cost, risk, and customer satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And with that comes any number of different combinations depending on the vertical you're in, depending on the industry that you represent. If you're in healthcare or defense, productivity is going to be considerably important to you. Cost is going to be important to you. Risk is going to be important to you. Not so much revenue, right? I don't think the Department of Defense is concerned about making money per se. That may change, who knows? But the goals here are one where InfoScale actually can be tailor fit to meet those outcomes. And as each one of these categories are driving some of those decisions, we'd like to think we're rising to the occasion to meet those challenges head on.
I know you're about to answer this in this next question, or in this next slide here, but really we've been witnessing the industry try to attempt to fix that problem for years. And it really is astounding to me that we haven't, developed a one-size solution. And here we have InfoScale, and it's so incredible the way that you guys have reimagined how this can all work in order to overcome some of these very simple but impactful challenges. So I'm just curious why these layers, why does this matter?
Yeah, well, I think that there's somewhat of a misconception about business continuity, operational resilience, and the most effective way of achieving it. If you think about the traditional models for infrastructure recovery, we had physical systems that. I'm sorry, was there a question, or was there a?
No. Somebody called.
Oh, sorry. Oh no, sorry, no problem. This notion of infrastructure resiliency and how best to achieve it. You had storage arrays, you can replicate data. You had physical infrastructure where you take backup images and restore them. And each one of those addressed the need for, if some physical construct or some physical asset was compromised in some way. But with the essentially what is the digital evolution of all of these pieces, such that now you have virtual and cloud native infrastructure, pretty much consuming an overwhelming majority of most data centers, you now have to think about it in terms of recovery at scale. It's not how do we recover 10 or 20 physical boxes, how do we recover 10 or 20,000 virtual instances? Now that being said, that's not going to change the fact that natural disasters will continue to happen. We've all experienced a disaster this week in terms of the weather, right? Imagine that there was an issue in one of the data centers for one of our customers, and their person who needed to get to that data center was in some way encumbered by the 3 feet of snow that they could not get through, and their car was plowed in, or whatever it may be. These are still commonplace things that will happen. I like to think that with remote access and the like, those have improved. But what that opens up is a whole nother threat vector, right? During the pandemic, one of the things that we found is that residential internet access became a mission critical component. Because if that went down for some reason, how are your employees going to be able to gain access to your infrastructure? And anyone who's ever dealt with residential internet access knows that there is the SLA on that is best effort. And plus, when you've got, I don't know how many family members and kids that are all trying to use the same bandwidth at the same time, that can be a little bit of a challenge. So those will continue to proliferate. Human errors and self-inflicted wounds, we know that there's really no antidote for that. I had a manager once said that there is no plausible defense against a well-executed delete key, right? I mean, it's basically, if someone goes in and drops a table or deletes something, unless you have a backup copy, unless you've got a way to recover that, there's no immediate resolution. Component failures, I'd like to say that the mean time between failure for most infrastructure elements has improved tremendously over the years. I'd like to see that that is not the primary concern, but certainly one that can continue to be an issue. Planned maintenance, for the most part, that consumes more downtime than any other factor that we've ever had to contend with. Patching, updates, upgrades, how can we help to streamline that? Some of the things that we've done within our own technology is to ensure that it's cloud native. Now you can go through the process of refreshing an InfoScale deployment faster than you could ever do so in the past. Taking out so much of what would be the heavy lift. And then working with native capabilities around, say, Yum or the native Linux component, so that now you can upgrade your application, your operating system, and your InfoScale components all in one operation. So knowing that those have to be accounted for just as much as would be a flood or a lightning strike or a pandemic, or in my personal favorite, a personnel challenge that resulted from a lottery windfall. I was a consultant a number of years ago working for a New York State government agency, which will remain nameless, whom at the time we were doing implementation of InfoScale. This was under the Semantic banner at the time. And I was there on a Friday, and all was well. Project was complete, successful, happy to go home. By Sunday morning, the project manager from the contract was reaching out to me, calling me frantically, saying something has gone terribly wrong. I'm getting calls from the team there. We've got to set up some proactive cases. Monday morning, they're having concerns and so on. I'm taken aback by this. I don't know what's going on. Everything was in perfect working order and condition when I left on Friday. I got a hold of this person that I had been working with, and he said, "Oh, no, nothing's wrong with the infrastructure. It's just there won't be anyone here on Monday to manage it." And I was like, I'm thinking there's some sort of vacation. And he goes, "Nope, the team hit the Mega Millions jackpot for $320 million. And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yep. And I didn't put my dollar in. One person forgot to put their dollar in. They cut him out of the winnings, and he was the one person left to manage of the 12 people. He was the 12th person, and he was the only person left to be able to support that." And it was a fantastical story and a heartbreaking story at the same time as well. But this goes to show that your people can be threatened in many different ways, right? Whether it's meteorological or Mega Millions. If I had not witnessed it myself firsthand, I never would have believed the story could have actually happened in the way it did. But it most certainly did. And in fact, one of these individuals happened to be on Lottery Changed My Life show on TLC. I saw him there years later, and I was like, oh my goodness, there he is. But in any event, I see.
You've got a whole host here of scenarios that everyone is dealing with today, all the way from these minute ones that how can you possibly anticipate a lottery scenario that would wipe out half your IT department, right? But then you have very common ones, IT cyber attacks. We all have experienced how common these are, and like Joe said, how sophisticated and successful they are. And the reality is again, it's complexity by design. It's intentionally complex. Enterprises are expanding. So all of these different layers combined with now these expanding opportunities for risk is just something that one single solution has not solved for yet to date. Really well said, Joe.
Yep. All right. So what are the challenges? What is standing in the way of customers actually taking full advantage of the technologies that are afforded to them, and what's throwing up the roadblocks? Well, certainly it's blind spots. I mean, I think if you don't know what you don't know, and your organizations continue to be siloed, what you end up with are little pockets of technology that, if not aware of one another, cannot be orchestrated. They certainly are not going to leverage any sort of economies of scale in terms of the technology that are used. But certainly it also can create some operational inefficiency. I think one of the most important things to consider whenever designing for operational resiliency is a standard BIA, right? A business impact analysis. What are the priorities? What applications need to be brought up first? What applications are needing to have the lowest possible RPO and RTOs? And how do you ensure that not only are they meet those expectations, but you can test and verify all of those pieces? The change that's happening in the industry, I think, is driven by not just internal decisions, but also the advances and sort of the geometric explosive growth in different technology options. Right? Think about how long it took to go from the physical world to the virtual world, and then the virtual world to sort of the cloud world, and then the public cloud world to the hybrid cloud to the multi-cloud. It is the hockey stick effect. So these changes are happening so rapidly. Customers are concerned that, how do I take full advantage of these investments, but don't end up becoming just another either shelfware or vaporware type scenario where I've put all this money and resources into quote unquote improving my environment, but how do I ensure that there's an ROI there? One of the things that InfoScale has been really great at doing is helping customers sort of shepherd them through or steward them through these changes. Giving them decisions that they can make sort of on their own schedules, that level of autonomy, and then maximize the return on those infrastructure decisions or those IT decisions. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, this notion of infrastructure-only resilience is just not satisfactory anymore, right? If you think about the public cloud, one of the most important considerations for running infrastructure as a service is understanding the shared responsibility model. Now, I'm certain you guys are all familiar with that. But just as a preamble to this point, the way we see the shared responsibility model is that the resiliency of the cloud is the responsibility of the CSPs themselves, while the resiliency in the cloud belongs to the tenant. It belongs to the cloud consumer. And where we find ourselves in a very unique position is that we can help customers achieve levels of resilience that the cloud providers can't do by themselves. Whether that's multi-cloud resiliency, multi-AZ resiliency, multi-regional resiliency, or different cloud topologies, utilizing a myriad of different storage and compute resources. So taking full advantage of what the cloud has to provide, but not sacrificing any levels of resilience should there be an outage, which unfortunately we've all seen as being a very likely and will continue to be so scenario. And then, of course, the onset of AI and cyber attacks and cyber resiliency. I think what's happening here is that decisions and changes are happening so fast. The expectations of resolutions also have to meet that demand. So if something can be compromised in a matter of minutes or hours, then you should be able to recover it in a matter of minutes or hours. And we can't wait what was 24 or 25 days that it took. I think it was. Which casino was it last year? I forget. I think it was MGM. I forget which one now. But I think they ended up still being down after somewhat of like 23 or 24 days, and that's not a sustainable model, right? You can't expect to remain in business, or at least certainly your customers, you can't expect them to stay with you if you can't provide your service for that extended period of time. So we know that, and we give customers the confidence that in the event of whichever threat, whichever consequential event, they'd be able to ensure that SLA and that expectations of their customers.
Recording in progress.
Hey, sorry, the recording just started again.
Oh, that's okay. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the sort of form factor of InfoScale and how it actually helps achieve these outcomes. So first and foremost, I want to say that InfoScale today acts as a software solution that lives primarily within the operating system. Now, I mentioned earlier this notion of us converting over to a cloud-native architecture, but even with a cloud-native form factor, there's still a core OS type of layer that we would exist within under the guise of Kubernetes. But in the traditional role of InfoScale, we exist as a set of packages, RPMs, executables, all within the Windows, Linux, or Unix operating space. From there, you have a choice to use a variety of different both strategic and tactical functions, helping to achieve a variety of elements, all meant to help drive a software-defined resiliency outcome. So whether it's real-time application health, understanding in real time the state and behavior and performance of your workloads, being able to recover rapidly from any number of different events, whether planned or unplanned, being able to mitigate some of the infrastructure delays that often come with some of the other resiliency solutions. Most, if not all, of our operations are transparent. I like to say that if I had to put an analogy for what InfoScale is able to achieve, you can think of it in three ways. First and foremost, we're a light switch, right? We can help ensure that the lights in your, for example, in your conference room, the lights are on. Perfect. If they weren't on and they needed to be on, we can automatically turn those on for you. But what we can't do, or I shouldn't say what we can't do, but what isn't immediate is, well, are those lights bright enough? You have to ask yourself, the lights are on, but can I actually read the page that's in front of me? We actually help with that too. So we're a light switch and we're a dimmer switch. So we make sure the lights are on, but we also can adjust the brightness in accordance with the workload. So the analogy there is your application's online or offline, but your application is now performant. Or we could back off some of that performance because we don't need it to be as bright or as performant depending on the time of day. But thirdly, what we would do is that, what happens if one of those bulbs goes out in the office there? Do you have to go out to the breaker panel for the building and shut down the breaker panel and take an outage for everyone just to change that light bulb? Of course not. And with us, we are of the same position. If you have an application or storage technology or some other element that we're protecting, in most cases we can eliminate altogether or mitigate substantially the downtime associated with that change. Whether it's a migration, whether it's a move between different cloud resources, or a transition to a whole nother architecture altogether. And that's really the goal for InfoScale across a hybrid ecosystem, be it, again, different platforms, operating systems, different database technologies, and so on. So as we get into some of the more specific elements of InfoScale and what it's able to do, we can kind of compartmentalize it a little bit more. First and foremost, the platforms that we support are as broad, and the depth of platforms, operating systems, and storage technologies that we support are as broad and as deep as any technology that exists. And I would challenge to say I don't think there is one out there that compares in terms of the platform support. We try to ensure that there's ubiquity across all the different operating systems. So if we support a storage array on one particular operating system, our charter is to ensure that's supported on all of them. If there's an application that's available on all platforms, we do everything we can to ensure that there's consistency there as well. Obviously, there's applications that are going to be a little bit unique to one or the other. Although that being said, SQL Server on Windows, that was something that would be relegated to Windows only for a very long time. Until recently, we saw a greater adoption of SQL Server on Linux. We had a customer come to us and said, you've supported us and various other database technologies for a number of years. We're moving SQL Server from Windows to Linux. Help us out. And I'm like, okay. We worked with the Microsoft team, and we actually developed an agent to support that. To ensure that there's level of consistency. So we know that we can adapt. We know that we can provide that sort of expansive support for our customers.
That was a great technical overview too. I want to make sure that was clearly heard because you've redefined exactly how the enterprise is orchestrating resilience, and InfoScale being that real-time operational resilience engine. This is, again, unlike anything else out there because enterprises that can't afford to fail, right? Modern outages, like you said, they don't happen in isolation. There's so many different issues that come up, whether they be that storage issue that turns into corrupted data, or the data, breaking the application outage, rippling across the infrastructure, and again, AI-driven scenarios that are just accelerating. What you just said, InfoScale is working completely differently. So instead of treating your storage or your data protection, your monitoring, and failover as separate problems, InfoScale is uniting them into a single full stack resilience solution designed for the enterprise and designed at scale. So it understands exactly how your applications, your data, and your infrastructure depend on each other, so that across on-premise, hybrid, cloud, and even edge environments, you're protected. And that protection really, really matters. The context matters. And so this is why those point solutions, this is why nothing else is ever going to be able to give you that same level of protection, because when something goes wrong, it's not just the reaction or the recovery, it's the intelligence behind why that operation matters. So detecting real operational risk in real time, and then more importantly, being able to intervene and respond in a way that's designed according to your specific resiliency standards.
Yeah, Cassie, that can't be overstated, right? I mean, that's the whole recipe, right? That is exactly what we've been designing for and advocating for a very long time. It's gone through some nomenclature changes over the years. It's gone through a few different, go-to-market type activities. But at the core, what we've always wanted to afford customers is the ability to stitch together all the various elements of their data center so that it can be a direct dotted line to the business outcome that they're achieving, right? So it's not about just looking at your database. It's not about just looking at a piece of storage. It's not about looking at one cloud provider. It's about looking at how those all work in concert with one another and build this sort of tapestry of services and infrastructure elements and applications, and then be able to monitor and report and act against that, right? And those acts, those operational control, that orchestration, DR testing and validation, right? One of the things that we're able to do non-disruptively is give you the confidence that your workload is going to be able to be recovered, or if we're going to migrate, how successful that migration would be. Is it going to attach and perform and behave as it should in this new location? All those elements are part of the InfoScale capabilities, and something that we've proven across, again, the most stringent and demanding ecosystems in the industry.
Like you said too, it's the recovery is remarkable because of the time and the accuracy and the lack of manual intervention needed. But again, what I'm most blown away with and why we see the enterprises constantly coming back to us, essentially as their backbone for resiliency, is because it's preventing it from escalating in the first place. And this is the operational intelligence that IT leaders must have, especially as they start to tackle scale and speed of the enterprise with, AI. And well said, love that.
Yeah. So if you think now, just kind of going through and finishing out the again, these different sort of compartments, if you would, storage resiliency, right? Anyone who has any historical context for Veritas knows that we began as a file system, right? Humble beginnings back in the late 80s and early 90s, that good old tried and true journaling file system. Well, that file system grew up, and they've learned a lot over the years, and they've built up quite a reputation and have evolved to be something far more consequential. Now, interestingly enough, I like to say that we were one of the founding contributors to the notion or concept of software-defined storage. I don't think we necessarily get the credit that's deserving of that, but if you think about what we were doing back in the late 80s and early 90s, we were taking disparate storage technologies and creating essentially what was little puddles of storage pieces and creating pools of enterprise data storage. And that to me is something that continues to be an important consideration, especially when you think about the public cloud and the just limitless options you have for storage media up there. Imagine being able to tier that storage. Imagine being able to go from the most low latency NVMe to something more general purpose, to an object-based blob or S3 target, being able to capture all of those in the same file system framework. Being able to allocate storage that is resilient across multiple availability zones, something that is not natively achievable with AWS from an EBS storage perspective. Being able to non-disruptively validate and test your DR strategy across, again, either on-prem to the cloud, between clouds, or between regions of clouds, or between availability zones, giving you, again, that level of autonomy. And with that also comes a myriad of capabilities around what I would consider to be, could be almost construed as somewhat of a data protection type of a theme, in that we have a set of snapshot facilities that are world-class. And one of the things that we're integrating with in the coming months is being able to integrate with cloud-based snapshots so we can do off-host recovery and scanning for the purposes of cyber resiliency. So if you think about one of the real major threats that, as we were mentioning earlier, we've talked a lot about, the evolution of these threats. But imagine being able to not just recover from a cyber threat, but actually identify one that's happening in real time. So one of the things that we've actually incorporated in that's taking advantage of some of the new AI elements is this notion of anomaly detection. And that anomaly detection will be able to tell you the behavior of your file system in accordance with what would be known parameters over a period of data inference of 30 days, 45 days, whatever you feel comfortable with. We then can see in real time if there's some sort of spike in whether it's read access, write access, ring names, those types of operations. Now, admittedly, an anomaly or an anomalous operation doesn't immediately mean it's bad, but an anomalous operation can very well signify or indicate that something is happening on your file system that it needs some validation or some verification. So imagine then being able to take that off host and then scan that with whatever scan engine that you so choose, and then provide a verdict back to your to that anomaly detection to say, hey, this is actually a known threat. The signatures match. This is a really you're going to struggle to recover from this. Let's revert back to one of your immutable checkpoints under what we call secure FS. So we understand that the evolution of recovery, we understand the evolution of resiliency has to meet the challenges of the day. And knowing that cyber threats are commanding that, we understand that cyber resiliency is defining so much of the priorities that the CTOs and decision makers are within our customers. And then lastly, it's about orchestration. I think it's critical that, again, with the heterogeneity that is so rampant in most environments, that being able to attach to the variety of different technology choices that might meet the demands of a particular workload, but then can be worked together in a way that doesn't become operationally prohibitive. So if you want to solve for one workload and you have to absolutely have this one piece of technology that takes care of it, whether it's a database solution or a messaging application or analytics tool, whatever it may be, that's fine. But if that tool then, or if that application service has a downstream dependency on some other workload or some other service or some other replication technology, more often than not, we're actually able to integrate with that workflow and actually orchestrate that and coordinate that. So whether we're actually performing the replication ourselves or performing the snapshot ourselves, or integrating with the array, integrating with the application, or integrating with that database management system, all of that can be orchestrated through our own framework, which is extensible to both Ansible playbooks as well as different other automation engines that exist in the market. Cool. So let's talk about real-time resilience and what the outcomes we've had for some of our customers, right? In the case of one particular customer, this was a remarkable reduction in their both planned and unplanned downtime. It was something of a sort of a watershed moment for us when the calculations came in and they shared with us these details and these outcomes. We were blown away because it was just, we knew we were capable of achieving this, and we needed the opportunity to be able to prove it out, and we were able to do so. The amount of hours saved, the level of automation, the RPO and RTO increases. I mean, just the incredible benefit that this particular customer was a massive financial services entity, was able to reap from using InfoScale, became again this just incredible proof point for us that we can scale this out to a wider audience. We can take this to a much bigger swath of customers, and it continues to do so with the with these customers across, again, a myriad of different verticals. Some of the things to consider, though, when they talk about the reduction in risk, and I think that this is an important one, that while somewhat subjective, can be still quantified and qualified. If you think about some of the service offerings that exist in the market today that make claims similar to some of the things you may have heard thus far this afternoon, what ends up happening is they are somewhat laser focused on one function. They're laser focused on maybe one particular outcome, and in cases of open source tools, often aren't met with the kind of enterprise support that is mandated by a lot of our customers, or at least the segment that we operate in. A lot of times you have situations where some solutions may be locked into a hyper-converged framework, which don't allow for, say, external storage considerations or other types of replication outcomes. And certainly very limiting in public cloud, or if so, there are plenty of stipulations or caveats there. And then in the case of application-based, what we find is that while yes, it may solve the problem for one particular workload and may do so very effectively, it has no context or awareness of, again, that upstream or downstream dependency that may exist within your environment. And again, that could be other applications, that could be other replication technologies, other storage considerations, other cloud components. All of that has to be accounted for in that orchestration and recovery process. So our outcomes here, again, going back to those business outcomes, we see productivity, we see cost, we see revenue, we see risk, all of those elements coming through and being quantifiable.
And ultimately, the question too that we hear most often, it's, can our most critical systems protect themselves automatically at scale and intelligently? And the answer is yes, and it's possible. And it kind of makes these other vanity metrics unimportant when you're able to ask this, critical business revenue protection question.
Indeed, yeah. So if it's a situation where the customer is hyper-focused on the resiliency of the application, the service itself, we're able to monitor that, we're able to give you that kind of real-time data points. If it's about the storage, it's about the performance and scale of that storage and the ability to recover that, whether it be at a mutable recovery point or a recovery elsewhere, geographically dispersed from your data center, we're able to achieve that as well. But what we do exceptionally well is stitch those two together seamlessly. And that to me is the two sides of the same coin of resiliency, right? Your data without your applications is not a resiliency strategy, and your applications without and your applications without your data is also not a resiliency strategy. You need to account for both. And where we find customers that are most successful is when they subscribe or they really embrace that mantra. All right, so that is where InfoScale sort of came from, where we've achieved, and what we are doing at the moment. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the vision that we have for what's going to come next. Because I think it's important that you can't just sort of rest on your laurels, right? You can't just say, hey, we solved all these problems, it's great, we're good to go, everything's taken care of, everybody's happy, and there's nothing else to worry about. I like to say that technology, there is no final destination. We are just in the midst of countless layover upon layover upon layover. And I always say there's another bend in the road, there's going to be another curve, there's going to be another decision gate that a customer is going to have to make about what technology to choose. And that decision isn't getting easier because now you've got options that are all valid, right? 10 years ago, you didn't choose, you just stood up VMware. Now you have to look at, well, there are at least a half a dozen enterprise hypervisor alternatives, there are public cloud alternatives, and there are countless hyper-converged considerations that all could be equally as effective. So we know that those changes happen. And where we see resiliency, that's evolving as well. From this notion of sort of a reactive availability solution to more of an autonomous resiliency strategy. And the first I would like to say, or what I like to think of, is what I call the third eye in the data center. It's about predictive analytics. Being able to understand the behavior of your application and anticipate and project how it's going to behave in the event of different environmental changes, whether it's an increase in user count, increase in storage and I/O consumption, network consumption, and so on. All these factors are elements that we've actually been monitoring for a number of years. We've had a concept within InfoScale for a number of years called adaptive high availability, where we actually can monitor the health and performance of a particular system, whether it's memory consumption, CPU consumption, and so on. We can actually see in real time that level of resource availability and make an intelligent determination across all the nodes within that cluster configuration. What we want to do is take that to the next level and actually look at all of the factors. We want to look at how that file system is performing. We want to look at the storage consumption. We want to look at the network layer. We want to look at all of the factors that would go in and be an influence, good or bad, to that workload, and then allow you to make that that appropriate decision. Now, that may mean everything looks great and you're just going to keep that application running as is. But it also may mean that, oh, I may need to consider a different storage technology, or I might want to consider this is a good opportunity for a transformation effort to maybe consider a Kubernetes platform because I can scale that out more effectively. Or perhaps it's, wow, I'm not even making this system breathe heavy. I could back off some of these resources and save myself a couple of bucks that I'm running these in the public cloud. So any one of those outcomes would be something I'd consider under the guise of predictive analytics. Intelligent workload optimization, I think that is what I would also sort of pair with that predictive analytics. Whereas predictive analytics, you're looking at the potential outcomes of changes in the environment, whereby if it's a fault or if it's a potential negative impact, the idea of workload optimization goes to the heart of where would my application best perform, where would it best serve me, whether it remains on-prem, in the cloud, or under the same physical infrastructure that it currently resides in. Optimize recovery architectures. This what I like to call the wingman for your resiliency and topology designs. Some of the things that InfoScale does really well is adapt to the both scale up and scale out considerations, but it also does any number of different cluster topology options. Whether you've got multiple subclusters running inside of a larger physical footprint, you can have a mixture of physical and virtual nodes. You can have a combination of on-prem and cloud-based recovery options. All of that can be, in many cases, adapted non-disruptively. But how do you know that you could benefit from that, or how do you take advantage of those without it being too much of an encumbrance or too much of a challenge? So this idea of being able to help achieve these types of configuration changes, to me, that's going to make for such a more powerful and sophisticated end user community. Fault simulations. So this idea of know before you go. For me, this one I think goes to the heart of what we've been doing under this concept of fire drill. Fire drill, though, while it is it's a fantastic tool to help for recovery readiness and preparedness, what it doesn't give you is sort of an indicator of, well, what would happen if XYZ scenario came about? Can I predict if I lose the network on this particular node and I have this challenge over here, or this storage component, or this virtual machine, or this container, or whatever element that I'm concerned with, well, what's the blast radius? What's the fallout from that particular scenario? Well, rather than having to actually go in and synthesize that and actually recreate it, our goal is to be able to give you a framework where you actually can sort of simulate that whole process and give yourself some confidence to know that, I am protected. Those single points of failures are a thing of the past. I can absolutely confidently, am confident to ensure that my recovery can sustain any number of threats that I feel are most common to my environment. Contextual alerting, the idea of swiping left on complexity. So this idea that being able to use learned language models to be able to add configurations, to be able to speak to in natural language the configuration. And this is something we've actually already been piloting as a support tool, a bot that you can actually use, and that I'm excited about when that eventually goes live. But the idea that we can take that whole the promise of AI in simplifying what is often a very complex, complex, but it doesn't need to be complicated operation, and give customers more value out of the technology. And then finally, it's about proactive threat protection, or what I like to call ransom awareness. And this is an idea where we can actually ensure that the threat surface or the attack surface can be scanned and verified, and then essentially mitigated for what would be some of the more common cyber threats in your environment. So whether that's a storage component, network compromise, different application ports and network ports, whatever those threats may be, being able to identify those within your infrastructure for those critical applications that we're protecting, and then verify that those can all be mitigated in advance.
That was a great overview of your roadmap, Joe. This is we're so excited because we can see how this impact that this is going to have immediately. Real features that are going to start delivering value, especially as you laid out the groundwork. InfoScale's future is operational resilience in real time. The future, again, is not reactionary, it's predictive. And I think that reinforces the direction where the entire industry is going to be headed very quickly. It's not building more runbooks. It's not faster recovery plans. It is this living system idea that resilience is embedded in your processes, and this is the predictive way to now pivot no matter what disruption comes your way in a way that you don't have to activate your entire IT team. So your systems are truly resilient by design. And it's not something, again, that you activate during a crisis. It's something that's always embedded and continuously adapting, even when your environment's changing. And as we start to look at, this new reality of future where infrastructure decisions, they're completely guided by this intelligent operational context. No more guesswork, and it scales whenever the application grows and changes. So this should be, very exciting for anyone in IT, because it takes a lot of, the redundancy and the rework and really the friction between security and operations that has existed. Because when you apply security in a way, again, that's at odds with your infrastructure changes or your applications, it becomes very, very hard to protect all the myriad of threats that can come about, especially cyber threats. And they're increasingly targeting not just the data, but again, that operational uptime. It's taking your business down, and that's part of their plan. So this is why InfoScale is embedding things like behavioral awareness and proactive threat response directly into the primary data layer and not your backup data. It's so that those systems start to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it is without question, it's one of the most consequential shifts in our respective industry, right? Disaster recovery 15, 20 years ago was just some form of replication, right? That's all you talked about, just replication. That has changed dramatically. We have to have a contextual awareness of your workload. We need to understand its relationship. We need to understand what is causing that, because if you're just replicating corrupted data, what good is that going to do you? So you have to be able to test and verify that. And those processes cannot be operationally prohibitive. They cannot take so much time, as I said before, and so much effort that it in some way dilutes the value of the technologies that you've invested in, right? It's all well and good to have these in place, but if it takes an army of people to be able to pull it all together and actually make it work, then it's not efficient, and in most cases it's not worth it. Our goal has been to ensure that not only does the outcome happen, it happens in a way that can be done at scale. It can be done not only in 1 or 2 environments, but 10 or 20, 100 or 200, 1,000 or 2,000. It can scale to that level so that customers can feel confident, regardless of the size of the environment that they're looking to protect. At the end of the day, listen. You may have 1 or 2 applications that are most critical to your business. That's okay. We can protect 1 or 2 applications, but you may have 1 or 200 or 1 or 2,000. It's okay. We can do that as well. It just depends on the requirements customers have, and I like to think that our technology does adapt very well to both. So as we kind of come to the end of the story that I've sort of been telling here around InfoScale, I think it's important to sort of refocus why it is customers have been choosing us over the years. What has made the difference for them? I think first and foremost, it's the fact that we've been heterogeneous. For many years, there's been, we aren't the only player in the game. Obviously, there's competitors out there. I get questions all the time. How do you guys do this in comparison to so-and-so or XYZ solution? It still happens to this day, all the time. And in most cases, it's usually like a native offering. It's something that's embedded with the operating system or embedded with the application. But what customers have routinely said is what's most valuable to them is the fact that we transcend all of those different applications, and we give them an efficiency that they can't otherwise achieve. It's too elusive. It's really just not. It's not something that's afforded to them natively. Whether that's in a public cloud setting, whether it's on-prem, and even if they are in the public cloud and they go quote unquote cloud native, what ends up happening is they consider, well, what if I go to a multi-cloud? All this work and investment I made in optimizing my environment in AWS, that's not going to do me any good over in Azure, because there's going to be all new considerations there. for us, the idea is that you can basically commoditize all the infrastructure, you commoditize the platforms, commoditize the cloud, and maximize the return on investment for them, but not sacrifice any resiliency or any of the expected SLAs. Full stack cyber resilience, as Cassie has done a remarkable job, not just today, but in general. You're never going to hear someone who's going to speak more fondly of our cyber resiliency strategy. Is this notion that we recognize that a full stack cyber resiliency strategy involves a comprehensive approach. It's not just backups, it's not just having edge level detection, it's about having the end-to-end comprehensive view, or again, this panoramic view of your enterprise. And that involves, in many cases, having a solution for your primary data, something that understands the context of where that data is being consumed and how that impacts your business, whether it's in downtime, whether it's in data exfiltration, whether it's ensuring that your data is encrypted so that it can't be taken and again exfiltrated to and used as some sort of a hostage negotiation tactic, if you would. All of that has to be accounted for, which is great for us, because if you're able to embrace that, what you get as an implicit support is all the infrastructure recovery, right? If you take a full stack cyber resiliency posture, you will realize, oh, I'm protected against infrastructure faults. I'm protected against fires, floods, fat finger commands, and fault lines, right? I'm protected against all of that if I achieve that cyber resiliency posture first. Fortunately, it doesn't often work the other way, and if it is, it's usually much more expensive and much more complicated. Secure by default, we have taken a very concerted effort to ensure that customers, both the product itself, right, under the guise of secure cluster, secure FS, secure boot, which is something we support, that's not our own technology, whether it's encryption at rest across Linux and Windows. One of the things that we do that is not available elsewhere, we actually encrypt dynamic storage on Windows. That's not something that is available in otherwise. And this is actually a fantastic story that how we came to support this. We had a very large financial services customer who had a number of data centers in the Ukraine. And this was about 4 years ago, in the months leading up to the initial invasion. And they had significant concerns about data exfiltration. They felt that there were going to be tanks basically rolling in the front door, and that they were going to extract the drives from these servers and then be able to exfiltrate their data. And these are Windows systems with dynamic storage. And they're like, we have to encrypt this data. What can we do? We're like, well, that's not something BitLocker supports. That's not something that is native to any Windows functionality. They're like, yeah, no, it's not. Can you guys go back, and we know you support encryption and you're on Linux. Can you do it on Windows as well? Well, to the testament of our engineering team, they went back and really, knocked it out of the park and was able to develop an encryption framework for that enterprise storage on Windows as well. So we know that it doesn't matter the operating system. It doesn't matter the context, or I shouldn't say it doesn't matter the operating system. It doesn't matter the infrastructure context, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, whether it's containerized, whether it's physical estate. Secure by default is such an important aspect, and customers are realizing that, and they're seeing that the investments we're making here are really mirroring their expectations. And then at the end of the day, about real-time resilience, meaning at a moment's notice, we know instantaneously the health and state change of a particular workload, or an associated set of dependent workloads. We have this idea of what we call a low latency monitoring framework that exists inside of InfoScale, that gives us a real-time report of the change of whatever application or service that you have us monitoring. So you can go in and set up for SAP or Oracle or SQL, TIP, whatever it is, and the minute there's a change there, you're going to be notified in real time. But if done so to your expectations, it also can associate with all of the upstream and downstream dependent services, thus creating that tapestry I was talking about earlier. This gives you a fault detection in seconds rather than minutes, or in some cases hours. So when somebody picks up the phone and says, hey, I can't access such and such a service, but also then gives you the ability to recover that and orchestrate that recovery much more effectively. Cool. So really at the end of the day, it's about intelligent uptime, this idea that we want to maximize both planned and, or I should say minimize the impact planned as well as unplanned downtime has in your environment, and make sure that customers, can get the most out of their investments, whether it's in storage, whether it's cloud, whether it's their physical infrastructure, virtual infrastructure, whatever that may be. Minimizing the time to recovery, both in ensuring that not only the detection of those workloads, if there's a change or some sort of compromising effect, but also the infrastructure under the covers. One of the things we also do very well is eliminate the need for storage reattach. Because we are effectively not just a resiliency framework, we're also the file system and storage layer. We have a shared file system, so that now you can have a workload that can be seen across multiple systems simultaneously. And the failover process in many cases can happen in sub 30 seconds for what amounts to be typically could be 5, 10, 20 minutes of downtime. Now with very little configuration change, you can have it in a matter of seconds, have it up and running on another node. And that would be under the guise of a traditional failover type configuration. In a scale out workload, that's a different altogether. That would be more of like a round robin where you may never detect any kind of outage because of the way that we're able to handle the different IO requests that come into that cluster. Zero data loss. So one of the things that we're actually really, really proud of is the fact that you can take and achieve synchronous level replication, an outcome similar to synchronous level replication, but without having to be limited by what is a traditional latency constraint. We've said for years that if you want to consider asynchronous or if you want to consider synchronous replication, that typically it's 60 miles, 100 kilometers. Again, those numbers vary a little bit, all dependent on the bandwidth. But there is going to be some theoretical limit, right? It's the speed of light, it's the connectivity, it's the bandwidth. One of the things that we offer is a hybrid model where you can have in a synchronous mode a change data replication model, and asynchronous have a sort of full synchronization happening over the wire. So you do a full synchronization of your data, say across multiple regions in the public cloud, and then within another availability zone, you can synchronously change, you can replicate the updates. So now you can have zero data loss even if you lose an entire availability zone, and you can recover to an entire another region altogether. So now you have the ability to gain both regional recovery, availability zone recovery, and regional recovery, and you don't have to sacrifice any data in the process. So that decision now no longer has to be a trade-off. Now it's no, I can have my cake and eat it too. And then as far as innovation, this is something that I feel like it's really important for customers, is that they can move away from having to spend so much time solving infrastructure problems. They can move their energy and their effort to what is actually matters to their business, and that's growing their market share, developing new applications, developing new services, and sort of alleviating the pressure on, how am I going to do for this disaster recovery plan? And I'm going to have to focus all my efforts on this. But at the end of the day, my application is still suffering because it needs to be, trained for a new AI model, or it needs to be, transformed from classic architecture to a cloud-native architecture. Any number of those all are factors that go into stagnating innovation, stagnating growth. So we find that if customers can, eliminate those dependencies and eliminate those those interruptions, then it's smooth sailing for them from that point on. So we're really keen to make sure that our automation efforts help to achieve that. All right, so I'm going to close out on just a sort of a bookend here to the conversation. Hopefully you guys really felt there was something you learned new here. It wasn't a technical deep dive in every facet of the product. Obviously that's hopefully if there's further conversations you want to have, I'm happy to go into it as deep or as wide as you like. But at the end of the day, our goal is really to provide the capabilities and functionality as described across as wide a swath of industry verticals and as customer segments as possible. And we've been very successful in achieving that in what amounts to be, across top candidates in the Fortune 500, top telecom and healthcare providers, pharmaceuticals, financial services, pretty much all the most strict and demanding environments. We've been able to have these pretty remarkable outcomes. So Thank you for letting me bend your ear for the past, looks like about 93 minutes or so. Hopefully you guys got some questions. Like I said earlier, the only bad question is the one you don't ask. So
Sure.
fire away.
Well, I'll just turn the camera on to myself for a sec. Alex Zaharov from ITY in Australia. I've got a few questions here. I don't think I'll ask them all just yet because otherwise I'll hog the microphone. But since the AWS outage, how much awareness has grown around InfoScale, and how much has business grown? Must be massive.
So, I can't speak to the specific business growth. What I can say is the number of customers that have chosen to use our stack in the public cloud has grown exponentially. And it's not just this most recent AWS outage, it's been a combination thereof. So we've seen an order of magnitude increase in the number of customers that have chosen to leverage AWS since, I would say, 2021. We've supported AWS, or for that matter, the public cloud, since roughly 2017, 2018. It was a little bit of, admittedly, kind of a, I don't want to say science experiment. That's not really a fair representation of it, but it wasn't exactly mainstream at the time because a lot of customers hadn't gotten to their tier one mission critical apps there yet. Similarly to the way when they adopted VMware, everything was dev and test. But as we've seen the increase in the demand for tier one infrastructure as a service, so has the increase in the demand for our customers. That being said, it's a lot of active customers, so they're using entitlement and licenses they may already have. But we have definitely seen a significant growth in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard of InfoScale before, and I'm fascinated to discover that you exist because it's so important. I mean, the AWS outage was, pretty bad. I mean, people who had these beds that, moved in different ways, they couldn't even activate the bed because it relied upon an AWS. I mean, you want to make sure you have a manual mode there and not have everything go to the cloud.
It wasn't just your Spotify playlist.
No,
Very critical things that impacted that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's good to know. I mean, we're in the 21st century. We have all this modern technology, and the answer to can it be done is yes. But it still takes somebody to invent it, and I mean, clearly you guys are on that path. And you said you have competitors. I'd be curious to know who some of those are, which I'll investigate myself. I'll ask Gemini or somebody to, some AI to tell me. But how long does it take to upgrade a company's cloud infrastructure and services into your resilient environment?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So
if you go down one slide too, I think that speaks to what we're witnessing with some of the migration over to OpenShift.
This one here?
Yeah, as far as getting started, everyone's environment is different, correct, right? So the process looks different depending on what, apps they're trying to protect. But Joe can absolutely speak to a specific use case with OpenShift. This is a huge, huge migration for an enterprise. 20,000 VMs they wanted to migrate. Typically would have been a 2-year project.
2 years?
2 years. 18 months to 2 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway.
What I'm saying is it didn't take 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
No.
It was a matter of weeks, over a couple of weekends that they were able to migrate the lion's share of these. So you asked, what does it take to introduce InfoScale into a customer's environment? In the case of OpenShift or Kubernetes, it's completely non-disruptive whatsoever. We are actually directly in the operator hub for OpenShift, and we can deploy directly from the OpenShift console, and we can be immediately integrated into your OpenShift ecosystem, both for containers and for OpenShift virtualization. We can start providing for persistent storage, resiliency, supporting a myriad of different use cases there. Most consequentially, those customers who are moving from VMware, moving over to OpenShift, who have a very large SAN investment, are looking to continue to maintain that. Our technology is ready built for that. So you can actually maintain, and that was what this particular customer was so keen on. It was about $500,000 of cost avoidance because they didn't have to purchase a whole entire new SAN infrastructure to support the migration. They could literally leverage the migration tools that were incorporated into OpenShift, use our stack as that new storage provision layer, and essentially become that software-defined storage layer for OpenShift. Taking over the responsibility of what would have been the VMFS data store, the vSAN components, vSphere replication, SRM, vApps, vVols, all that stuff. basically essentially gets consolidated down into what InfoScale can provide and has been providing for applications for decades.
Yeah.
We've just taken the effort and made the effort, I should say, to containerize it so that customers can benefit from it more rapidly.
Yeah, well, from 18 to 24 months down to weeks, I mean, it replicates the same sort of advantages we see with AI, crunching things down from a long period of time down to minutes or so. Have you ever had an outage?
Me personally?
No, InfoScale.
I had a real nasty one a few years ago.
Yeah.
Luckily, my drives were mirrored. No. So, have we ever had an outage?
Because, I mean, in theory, you'd be using your own technology
I'm not being evasive.
to avoid that.
I'm not being evasive. Don't misinterpret my my pause here.
Yeah.
I don't know internally of an example of where at any point Veritas, Symantec, because we and by right, I don't interface with the IT team
Sure.
on a regular basis, but I do know they do use our software.
Yeah.
And I do know that they have clustered some of the database servers using our stack, because I know I think it was an escalation at one time that was on internal that happened a few years ago. But my understanding is that we've never had any consequential outage that's impacted our day to day. But that being said, we're not a service delivery engine, right? If we had an outage, it would be something we'd only feel internally.
Yeah.
It's not likely that the customers. Most of the time, it's just not an analog there.
Sure.
But we definitely eat our own cooking. I will say
Yeah,
that.
you drink your own champagne. And look, I mean, I saw the slide that said 5 nines, and it's like I've heard 5 nines for, I don't know, many years now. So isn't it from 5 nines to 10 nines or 1,000 nines, or have we finally really hit 2 zeros with a 1 in front of it?
Yeah. So here's the thing, and it's funny. After this conversation is over, my colleagues and I, we're going to laugh about this.
We'll laugh about it now.
The nines are a situation where some of it is aspirational, and some of it has to do with the fact that you have to balance planned versus unplanned downtime. So when you talk about planned downtime and being able to mitigate that to the tune of 5 nines, there are many components within InfoScale that will help you achieve that, right? Being able to transparently move workloads that could take a matter of seconds, so that you can then do like rolling upgrades. So we talk about that sort of achievement. That's what we're talking about. But in terms of unforeseen circumstances, what our goal is to ensure that the impact that those have to your environment is mitigated as much as I say humanly possible, but it's really not humans, it's technology possible, so that there is not any sort of what I would consider to be consequential impact to your business. And what we find is that customers, even our own customers, whom have used our product and continue to use our product, if they have a situation where they've not used it in a particular environment and they've had an outage, like these are headline outages where this happens. A customer it'll hit the front page, and we're like, hang on a second here, that's our customer. And then we go in and we find out, oh, but that was that one app they didn't use us for, and it was the thing and the guy, and so we realize that it's in those situations we can't control it if they don't use the technology to prevent it, but it's the other environments that continue to operate almost without disruption.
And I mean, I've got 3 more questions, but let me ask this one. Will a future version of your technology be loaded directly into future robots to run on device in the robot's brain, so they never rise up and kill everyone because some data got corrupted by a cosmic ray or AI poisoning?
Did you watch iRobot beforehand?
Of course. I'm a big Asimov fan. I mean, I know robots can go bad. This is the sort of tech that'll stop that from happening.
So listen, whether Skynet becomes self-aware, and Judgment Day comes, right?
Yeah.
Our goal is not to perpetuate that. We really want to take AI in a direction where it actually makes the experience of using our product as equivalent to saying, Alexa, play this song, or Google say this, or Gemini say that. That's where we want to get to, because we know we can achieve that.
Yeah.
And it's in that sort of quest, if you would, that we see so much of the innovation that we're building towards. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. I really am serious about that. I think that's honestly, that should be the goal for all software vendors.
This was a serious question.
Yeah.
I want to see this technology protecting us from robots. And so, what else do you wish your platform did or offered that hasn't been delivered or invented yet?
It isn't delivered or invented yet.
Yeah.
Well,
'cause you've obviously got a roadmap.
I will say the one thing that it can't do is it can't dynamically discover application interdependencies yet. If you tell it has an interdependency, we can then build that into our workflow. But that is probably the single most elusive element in all of IT orchestration, because if I point InfoScale at a database and I say protect that database, yes sir, I will protect your database, but it's not going to know immediately, oh, but this database is connected to by 7 other applications and 5 other front end web servers or 6 other storage components. There is a degree of manual intervention that's still required there.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping is that AI will actually be able to take that effort and build those relationships in real time more dynamically without a customer having to have this sort of, extremely detailed, network topographical map that will connect all those dots. We want to be the genesis for that.
And just finally, and I'm sure there's plenty of other questions here, but can you name any customers that you're working with in Australia, where I'm from?
As a matter of fact, we do have, and some of our largest customers over the years have been out of Australia. I don't know if naming names is what we're here to do today or not, but
you can
I
name
assure you
industries,
there
maybe.
are.
Yeah.
What was that?
Industries.
There are financial services, there's telecom, and there are some government agencies in Australia that we all work with.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, let me pass the mic to whoever's next.
We'll follow up too.
Thank you for those questions, by the way. Those are fantastic.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with public-facing references, we'll happily follow up with ones that are in.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is being recorded, so I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes, I have one.
Okay, one second. I'm just passing the mic over to Philip.
So thank you for the presentation, but you don't cover at all any product details. So I'm a little bit frustrated, to be honest. In the past, Symantec froze Veritas because when they acquired the company, Veritas missed the opportunity to release and develop an object storage software. Guess what? When they got separated again, Veritas started this project, but it was too late, and they stopped it. Is there any plan for you to at least offer an S3 interface on top of the file infrastructure?
So I'm very familiar with what you're describing, and if I may, if there are some technical questions that you want to dive into these pieces, I'd be happy to elaborate further on the elements here. So I apologize if it didn't go deep enough in the technology explanation. What you're talking about at Veritas was the cognitive object storage solution that we had published. I was part of the team that helped to kind of shepherd that along for a number of years. Could write a book on the things that have been developed over the years that had potential, but what lacked was, I would think, the messaging and the use case and the right target audience. Right now, we don't have any immediate plans to resurrect an object storage platform. I will say this, we do have an S3 integration component whereby you can do dynamic tiering between block and object storage. This can work on-prem, this can work in the cloud. You can actually have it transparently tier storage across NVMe as well as S3 targets. So that's something that we have supported. There is, while at Veritas, we developed the Access Appliance, and that was initially a multi-protocol filer, which turned more into a long-term retention appliance. I believe within the confines, because InfoScale was essentially the guts of that, the brains behind that whole appliance. I do believe an object overlay was developed there. That, though, has not been something we've been emphasizing or been focusing on. And I certainly I don't want to promise or commit something that is just not on our roadmap right now.
Speaking about VXFS, the file system, do you plan to add any parallel access? Today for AI, for instance, there is a stress on the I/O in order to deliver faster the data, at least to accelerate the access.
Yes.
Some companies are completely naked. So Dell, NetApp, Pure recognize this, and they jumped recently to add PNFS because they realize that not addressing HPC in the past and with the new wave of AI, they have to deliver something. Yeah. So what is the plan on your side?
So, I mean, obviously we do have parallel access in the file system through cluster file system. So that is available today and has been for a number of years. And we continue to iterate and improve the scalability and performance of that across any number of different use cases, most recently being the Kubernetes and cloud native type of designs that have really dominated so much of the conversation. But we do recognize that there are two conversations around AI. There is how we use AI to improve the product and improve the customer experience, and there what it is we can do for AI workloads. So we've already started to support certain AI databases. We've added support for recovery for, say, Vertica, which is an AI database. And we're looking at how we can be more prolific in that space. So absolutely, we are working to make the file system as attractive to those types of workloads. One thing, though, that just to be fair, is that obviously an HPC type of architecture, typically we're talking about thousands upon thousands of nodes. It's a different architecture. It's a different communication channel. Ours tends to be one that is more adaptable at a slightly more conservative segment of systems. In the hundreds, tens and hundreds, not in the tens of thousands. And that's just the nature of how the file system is designed and the workloads that it's meant to perform for. But like I said, we are absolutely looking at how we can be more effective in that space.
So Veritas was a king when Unix was, let's say, dominate the market. So Unix almost disappeared. What is the primary platform for InfoScale today?
So 70% of our platform is on Linux, and that is, I would say, an overwhelming majority of that is Red Hat. But we do support SUSE as well. We support Oracle Enterprise Linux. We support Rocky Linux, and we also support. There's one additional distribution that we were just added recently. It's another variant. I forget the name of it, but it was. No, what was it? I'll have to go back and get the name of it. We still continue to support Solaris, and interesting enough, Oracle just announced they're extending Solaris 11 support until 2037. And honestly, I'm not being in any way, shape, or form facetious when I say this. We had a customer that came to me in 2017 and asked, "Are you going to commit to supporting Solaris 11 for the next 17 years?" And I was completely incredulous at that statement. I'm like, "You're asking me to give you a 17-year commitment?" Well, that was 9 years ago, and we're getting close to that 17-year mark, and now it's been extended even further. So while we completely appreciate that the erosion on the Unix estate has been undeniable, there's still a lot of customers we have, very strategic customers that are happy with AIX. They are happy with Solaris and certain workloads. We still have customers running Solaris 10. I get that that's not growing, it's not expanding, but that's it's a quality over quantity type of discussion. Like I said, a majority of customers now have made that transition to Linux. But we still offer an Endian process where you can actually take that file system that was running on Solaris, running on AIX, and move that directly to Linux without having to run any sort of major manipulation, right? We do all that Endian conversion. So when the time comes, technically we still have our OEM for HPUX. That's something that I think just is about to reach a 30-year anniversary of when we first introduced that. Next year, it'll be 30 years that has been in the place. So the online JFS and HPUX, that's still VXFS under the covers. So while the history and legacy exists, we know that the evolution is there, and we've adjusted accordingly.
So last question for me. When I mentioned Unix and Linux, even there was a volume manager for Windows a long time ago. It was really horizontal, meaning that the operating system was not a challenge because the product work everywhere. So today this completely changed because we have VM, we have container, and we have the cloud. So very rapidly, where can we run today InfoScale? And are you present in some hyperscaler marketplace?
Yes. So we are both in the AWS and Azure marketplace. You can run us as infrastructure as a service deployments in AWS and Azure. And there are some fantastic use cases that I'm happy to share with you. I've been fortunate enough to co-author some really good blog articles about AWS that explain all of the resiliency elements and capabilities there. And this is for both Linux and Windows. We still continue to support Windows. We still have some very strategic customers that are continuing to use our capabilities there. And as I mentioned before, we added in encryption for dynamic storage, which is a wholly unique function that we support. So whether you're going to run in Kubernetes, OpenShift, whether you're going to run in physical, virtual, or in the cloud, whether it's SUSE, Red Hat, Rocky Linux, Oracle Enterprise Linux, Solaris, AIX, HVUX, our volume manager file system, and for the most part, except for HVUX technically, if you run it separately, our high availability and storage management is ubiquitous across all of those platforms and infrastructures.
So you invite me to ask you the really last one, from me, and with a slide with the Red Hat logo, OpenShift logo. What can we expect in the next few months between InfoScale and Red Hat? Because Red Hat is a very close partner for you.
Yeah, well, we've already made announcements. There's already been announcements about the partnership. So what we've actually been able to achieve, and admittedly, had it not been for the weather and the transportation snafus, I was supposed to be at the Red Hat conference this week, and then coming to see you guys, and going back there to meet with them to discuss some of the advances that we've announced. We're supporting essentially what is OpenShift virtualization. We're a certified OpenShift virtualization partner for them, adding in support for persistent storage. As I mentioned earlier, being able to take all of the elements that exist today from a resiliency and storage management layer inside of VMware. So that's VMFS, vSAN, vVols, storage vMotion, vSphere replication, SRM, all of those elements, and being able to use InfoScale to replace those inside of OpenShift. And that's for the support of configurations where there's shared nothing or SAN-based storage, as well as some of the new edge workloads that have been announced. So they have announced what they call their TNA, or two-node plus arbiter configuration. We actually support that as well. And again, there are co-authored articles that Red Hat has published about the partnership and about the value and capabilities that we bring to the table. I couldn't be more excited about the prospects of what the Red Hat and InfoScale partnership. And Bruce, I don't know if you want to maybe just kind of share a little bit of your conversations that you had yesterday. I know you were there in Vegas having the conversations with Red Hat. Do you want to maybe give your impressions of what they were saying?
Well, I didn't attend any of the breakouts, but I did have a conversation with their VP of Technology for the Americas, a gentleman named Jason Corey, and we talked about this specific use case with Red Hat OpenShift virtualization, and where we feel like we have some real synergies with cases where we're already licensed to a customer. One of the changes that you'll see, and maybe this is a good time to talk about this, with our go-to-market strategy, is we're stepping away from a bunch of different licenses to a consolidated license. So you may remember from your time, we had different SKUs for InfoScale that were differently able, availability, storage, or enterprise. So we're gonna start selling one single SKU that includes the full feature of InfoScale throughout the entire stack. And we're going to sell that with unlimited use rights to our customers.
VCS included?
VCS included, everything. Everything InfoScale, one SKU, unlimited use across the enterprise. And what that will do for Red Hat OpenShift, it will enable them to go to any of our customers and have discussions, because software-defined storage is very hard to sell. If you have customers that are married to hardware and they've been using monolithic hardware storage for a long time, selling SDS to them is a challenge. Well, if you're licensed for InfoScale, you own SCS already. Wasn't the case at Artera, but that is the case at Cloud Software Group, and that is a key differentiator for us. And it speaks to the vision that CSG has with taking the handcuffs off of InfoScale. So anywhere where Red Hat wants to either they're with the customer already, and the use case, the success story that he told you about with the financial earlier, there was a case where they owned InfoScale and they owned Red Hat, but they didn't know that InfoScale did software-defined storage. And then when they figured that out, we saved them $480,000 in hardware costs that they were going to go to 2 different vendors for, and they were able to deploy that with no cost to them. So we're very excited about that, and beyond just the VMware extraction story, we tell a really great story by up-leveling the storage backend on Kubernetes and containerized architecture.
Yeah. The transformation story is really what it comes down to. And to speak to the comment you were saying about the marketplace, we're also in the operator hub for OpenShift. So a customer can go in today and they can install that operator and deploy it just like they would any other cloud native service or workload. And I think it's 3 separate containers. Once that's deployed, you can then begin to start to configure the persistent volumes, establish whatever kind of recovery methodologies that you want, set up your DR configurations, and so on. So there's quite a bit of integration that we've done, not only with on the OpenShift front, but Red Hat, again, being our primary platform, most of our new functionality gets released with that platform in mind first.
So I have another question which is completely different. You mentioned that CSG, Cloud Software Group, so acquire the rest, if I can say that, after Cohesity acquire, and they split in 3 entities. How many people today work for InfoScale? You didn't give us a number, I think.
It's a great question, Bruce. Where are we at this point? I think it's got to be over 1,000.
And how many did you in this operation, integration operation? Did some people leave or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did do some slight restructuring. So as part of the acquisition with Cloud Software Group, a lot of the operational aspects, the back-end processes, HR, marketing, not necessarily marketing, but some of those things are managed by Cloud Software Group across the enterprise. So if you think of Cloud Software Group as the overall company, within Cloud Software Group there are business units. Citrix is a business unit, Tibco is a business unit. We are now a business unit alongside of them, along with Artera data compliance, and the general manager she's right down the hall. So I can introduce you to her later if you'd like to meet her. And so we're now an independent business unit. I think we have a little over 1,400 employees today. I don't know what that number was before. So that's a ballpark figure that I'm fairly confident in sharing.
Another one.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah. Recently, I think CSG decided to sell Jaspersoft. I think it was announced or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I read something about that too. I think that happened prior to the acquisition of Artera, though.
So it means that the strategy of CSG is to acquire interesting with a lot of potential assets, etc. But at the same time, like an apartment, they sometimes sell some portions, some rooms of the apartment. So what could be the future of InfoScale within this kind of group? Because when we see backupexec.com, it's like an orphan animal now in the...
So if I may, what you're going to find is that the sort of prevailing sentiment across all of the business units, the primary business units at CSG, is about the enterprise segment, and that the accounts that they want to focus on are the ones that are going to be the ones that have as much invested in the product as we do. And InfoScale, essentially, as it transitioned away from Veritas and stood up on its own, we sort of began that movement to where we are going to emphasize our enterprise segment as a primary driver for our roadmap and strategy discussions, and so much of the what I would consider to be the most important contributions to the business, and that's exactly why CSG I think was so we were endeared to them, because this model is exactly what they're looking for. They're just accelerated our ability to act even more autonomously, right? They've given us even more opportunity to really drive the proliferation, right? Giving us the freedom to now make this single SKU, to be able to take down all the barriers, to eliminate any of the headwinds or the blockers to adoption. And that's something that I think it speaks volumes to their I would say commitment and their belief in the future of the product.
I'll give you a slightly different answer to this question by giving you an example of the perceived value of our company by our CEO, our current CEO, Tom Krause. Tom tried to buy Veritas 9 years ago when it was owned by Symantec, and they told him no. When we spun out and became a privately held company under Veritas, he again tried to buy InfoScale sometime around 6 years ago, and he couldn't do it. When Arctera became a separate entity, he bought Arctera to get InfoScale, and obviously the data compliance and backup exec. But he's been trying to buy this company for 9 years because he gets what we do. And you just sat through a technical presentation that granted, it was high level, but I think it speaks volumes to what InfoScale can do and what it can do for customers that need to protect mission critical workloads. That's what Tom gets, and that's what we do. And I, when you talk about the future, we're going to be here for a long time. This company is going to grow. I think we'll double our size, our revenue in inside of 3 years.
So, with the 8 entities I see on the web, we can expect some synergy, some solution developed with Citrix or TIBCO, glued together with InfoScale, something like that?
Yeah, if I may. So we've already supported TIBCO long before CSG was even in the mix. We've had support for EMS.
Yeah, but this is what I call an external support. People now expect much more than that because you.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
You are under the same umbrella.
Yeah. Without overstating the plans and without overcommitting, what we are encouraged to do is to have as broad or as deep a conversation as we feel comfortable with our brothers and sisters at CSG to determine if in fact there is an opportunity to create a more effective solution. And with TIBCO, I absolutely believe there is, and we've already been engaging with the product management teams at TIBCO to have these discussions. And even with Citrix, with some of the things that they're doing with OpenShift and our support of software-defined storage and persistent storage capabilities in OpenShift, being able to support the VDI use case. Mm-hmm. So we've done quite a bit to optimize InfoScale to support that use case, so it can scale up to that large form factor rather than just a few hundred virtual machines. It's a few thousand virtual desktops. So we're doing things already within the product and conversations that had already begun and discussions that had already begun prior to the acquisition. This just gave us a rather sort of serendipitous moment where it's like, oh, okay, we were having both of these conversations independently. Now it's a family affair, right? Now it's okay. Let's really take this to another level. There's no commitment at this point on when those are going to be made available. There's no commitment on to what extent they are going to be and how the transactions are going to work. It's still very much in discussion, but we recognize that there's an opportunity there and certainly want to take advantage of it when it makes sense.
Okay, thank you. So I think we can conclude, no?
Great questions.
We can conclude probably.
Do you want to do any closing statement?
I had not prepared a closing statement.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to close formally?
Any other questions? Anyone else?
I don't think so. No, don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was pretty good.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know there was,
Great questions.
hopefully it played out a little bit differently. I was supposed to be there physically in the room, but thanks to this lovely conferencing technology, I feel like we're still be able to connect. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I know we weren't your only stop on the day, and you guys asked a lot of great questions and certainly sat through the material, and I appreciate all the consideration. At the end of the day, hopefully what you guys took away from this is the fact that InfoScale, while it may be a technology that has been in the market for a fairly long period of time, has evolved and maintained relevance that perhaps has been maybe a little understated. We have transitioned across the movement from different platforms, from the Unix to the Linux world. We've transitioned from the physical to the virtual estate. We've transitioned from the on-prem to the cloud estate. We've been right there, part and parcel to the transformation strategy that customers are taking on when it comes to Kubernetes and containers, and giving customers the ability to really drive home some of the more I would say, consequential needs for cyber resiliency across all of these estates. So what was challenges in the infrastructure up until a few years ago have morphed into this more sort of nebulous cyber resiliency challenge. We feel like that we've really risen to the occasion to help customers meet those challenges head on, whether it's a ransomware attack, whether it's an infrastructure fault, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a lottery windfall, whether it's a change in their infrastructure, right? Whether it's, that, like I said earlier, whether it's the having to adjust the brightness of the lights or change those light bulbs. We're giving customers the control, the confidence, and the tools to make those resiliency or those business outcomes a reality for them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed what we had to share today. Have any other questions, any other information you're looking for, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you guys for joining us.